I'm joined here with Jeremy Goss on his book signing date at Gerald's. Jeremy, pleasure to meet you. Obviously the book's going down a storm at the moment. You've got a very different story to the average autobiography. Do you think that's why your book has been so successful so far?
That I don't know. I just wanted to deliver a book with honesty and let people know what kind of character I was, or am, I should say. My character's still the same, but it had to change a little bit from being in the world of football. A bit more of a cutthroat business to be involved in. And I just wanted to get across how I actually arrived into professional footballer, given the character I was. Young, shy, unassuming lad who wanted to keep himself to himself. And how did he survive in the world of football that was, riddled with sarcasm and arrogance and big timers? In the early 80s, it was renowned as big time Charlies. And I was desperately keen not to be one of those, and because that wasn't me as a person. But it was a tough world, and I was rejected as a youngster earlier on in my career with Southampton and Aston Villa. So there was a lot of things to get through, and I kind of tell a story of resilience and someone who just didn't give up, who had a dream to go for and kept to his dreams, and eventually lived out his dreams through a lot of hard work, endeavour, and an incredibly a good support frame that was around me, which naturally included my family.
Was there a moment or a day that you just thought, I want to put this story into a book, I think this could make a good book, or was it just sort of a gradual process?
I was never going to write a book.
Okay.
Never. There was no need for it. I didn't really think that the Norfolk public or anyone else was ever going to be interested in it until, one day I met Ed Cousinslake, a fantastic writer and creative autobiographer, I should say. And he was wonderful. He kind of teased me into it. And I knew that I'd met someone who could get my story across in the right manner and tell it in the right way, because I didn't want it to come across as just the ordinary lad who played a game after game in the Premier League and wow, that's boring. I wanted to be someone who could tell a story far better than me, write a story far better than me, and Ed was that man. So the first reason is I met the fantastic writer, ghostwriter. I wanted to do it for my parents so I could kind of give something back to them as a thank you, of an appreciation of what they've sacrificed to let me live out my dreams. And thirdly, it's a legacy. I've got 2 young boys and a lovely wife. They're going to be, my children will be hopefully opening this book up when they're a lot older and I'm no longer on this world. And it can be forever in the family, and I like that idea that I can create something that's everlasting.
What was it like going through and picking out your very highs? Obviously the goal against Bayern Munich, so famous, and the lows, maybe playing obviously the unofficial record for the most amount of reserve games. Was it very reminiscent going through and picking out the memories to go into this book?
It was tough. I could have put 1,000 more things in there that didn't make the book, and that goes with the same with the pictures, the photographs that are in there. There's another 1,000 that I could have gone in there. So it was very hard to come up with a finished article and be really, really 100% delighted with it. I am delighted with it. I am pleased and very proud that we've both come up with something that I think will have an effect on people's lives and others can learn from, youngsters can learn from. But it was a hard choice of where you start, what kind of story you're going to portray, and where it's going to finish. And I suppose the whole book is unfinished. It's still lingering on, well, what's Gossy doing now? I'm still only a young man, really, and I wrote this thing. But I've experienced life outside of football, which I brought into the book and wanted to tell everyone about the difficulties that footballers face when they finish. Where do you go? What do you do? And, I felt very unwanted when I finished the game. I wasn't skilled at anything, rejected all over again, and I had to fight my way through to get and stamp my authority in the general world, the general life. And hopefully I think I've done that, but I try and tell the story about how I did it and the hardships that went into doing it.
Okay. You wrote the book alongside Ed. Do you think you could have done this without him?
No, of course not. Anyone can string lines together, but to do it in a professional way that has an extra meaning to it in the way it's written, with the text that's used. Forget all the grammar and the spelling mistakes, that comes natural with me. So he can tidy that up. But it needs to be put in order. I can tell hundreds of stories, but they're not in order. This had to be A to B to C to D. And I had all the right words and all the right stories, but in the wrong order. Ed's kindly put it into a storytelling format. I think it's come out incredibly well. It does touch on glory days of Bayern Munich, like you just mentioned. Yes, of course, that was the ultimate high. But what about the ultimate lows, where I could have given the game up on 3 occasions, and I could have left Norwich City on 2 or 3 occasions as well, and a lot of reserve team games of just a little bit of depression sinks in. Well, you don't get anywhere. You're not achieving anything. And what do I do then? How do I face world then? Do I just give up and get into something else, or do I fight and show resilience and crack on, which I did the latter.
You've obviously got such a unique story. You've just said there about your really highs and your lows. Do you think this book could be maybe a lesson for modern day footballers to keep going, and maybe one day you will get that glorious high?
It's a story about me living out my dreams of the love of the game. I love the football, I love the pitch, I love the rules, I love getting muddy on the grass, I love training and fitness. The material gains and the big contracts was never part of my makeup.
Okay.
And in the early 80s, when I was in the game, there wasn't a lot of huge amount of money in the game anyway. There were millionaires in the game, and certainly in the early 90s, lots of them, and clubs were getting bigger and bigger. Youngsters going into today's game, I feel they've got it all wrong. They want the money, the big cars, the fancy houses before they love the game. I was the other way around. I just wanted to play football. And the passion and enthusiasm I had for the game stands out like a sore thumb. And that's my message to people. If you want money, if you want material gains, you're not going to make it. You won't make it. You've got to love playing football and keeping fit.
You said there about loving playing football and keeping fit. Do you think that's why you went on to finish your career at Kings Lynn, a non-league team? How was that for you, dropping down from the Premier League or the top divisions at the time to Kings Lynn?
Really hard.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it.
Okay. What made you do it then?
We won the FA Youth Cup in 1983, and a good friend of mine, Tony Spearing, was part of that team, big part of that team. And he then went on to do lots of things in his football career, and he ended up at Kings Lynn himself.
Okay.
So he teased me into going to Kings Lynn and signing there. I only played a very few games for them in the end, and it was something that, you know, I didn't really want 100%. And if you don't want something, it shows. So I took a step back and went a different career direction other than Kings Lynn, but I'm still proud enough to represent them. I thought, well, I did my best, although they never saw the best of me, the fans. They've done ever so well since. And I didn't want to drop down into lower league division for the simple fact I wanted to remember what the Premier League was like. I spent all my life in the Premier League. Even when I signed for Hearts in Scotland, it was in the Premier League. And the last game I recall playing for nearly all my career, at the very end of my career, was, you know, against Celtic, with 60,000 fans watching you. And I still got my boots at home with the mud on those boots from that game.
Okay.
Can you believe that? And that's how I wanted to leave it, and I wanted to remember football at its very best. And fortunately, I was in a very good position where, fortunately for me, I did just that.
Jeremy, the story's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.